Good evening. If you are under 30, you have never seen a flood like this. President Richard Nixon has declared the entire state of Pennsylvania a major disaster area, along with Florida, Maryland, Virginia, and New York. Governor Schaaf, meantime, is estimating damages at more than $1 billion. The governor requested aid after a helicopter tour of flood-ravaged areas where the death toll now is approaching 30. Speaking at a news conference, Schaaf said the president agreed to the disaster proclamation immediately after receiving a telephone call on the situation from the Office of Emergency Preparedness. The governor also says he'll order the National Guard to take action if looting continues in places where it has already been reported. The governor says he'll meet on Monday with legislative leaders to explain the situation. He also says he'll address a joint session of the legislature on Tuesday to describe the destruction and the cleanup plans. High water is expected to crest at the point tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. When it does, it should be 35 feet deep, a full 10 feet above flood stage. That means basements of downtown and north side buildings will be flooded. If it goes to 36 feet, the streets of downtown Pittsburgh could be skimmed with water. Workers are now setting up flood barriers around some vulnerable buildings. And early this afternoon, government workers and some employees of downtown businesses were sent home early. The deluge is the act of Hurricane Agnes, the same storm that killed more than a dozen persons in the South and in Cuba. Throughout all of Pennsylvania, the story is the same. High water, massive evacuations, blocked highways, knocked out utilities and communications. The hardest hit areas for the moment are still around Harrisburg and small towns in the upper Allegheny River basin. But the fury is starting to move toward Pittsburgh. If the water goes as high as predicted, the north side and parts of downtown will indeed be flooded. Right now, runaway barges are causing more than their share of trouble along the Allegheny. Police have been trying to count all the runaways, but it's virtually impossible. A good guess is that more than 100 barges are floating wild downstream. As they pitch and tumble, their fantastic force and weight has smashed everything in their path. One of those barges nearly took the lives of 3 men working on a wharf below the 9th Street Bridge. A runaway barge smashed their walkway apart, knocking them into the water. They floated downstream for a short distance and climbed an abutment for safety. Police rescued them a short time later. Among all the debris floating down to the point are dozens of shattered boats of all types. No fatalities are reported so far in the immediate Pittsburgh area. But this morning, dozens of expensive cabin cruisers and recreation boats were torn from their docks in O'Hara Township. Yvonne Forston has the story.
Boat owners at the Harbor Isle Yacht Club were in a state of shock this morning when they were told many of their boats were either destroyed or lost down the river. Some boats were rescued and towed in, but the majority, which totaled more than 100, were gone. Manager of the Harbor Isle Yacht Club, Manny Trottenberg, explained what happened, and boat owner Lee Goldberg talked about his loss.
We were down here about 12:30. The water started to rise fairly rapidly, much more so than we were led to believe it would. There was really no great problem at all until about 2:30. And about 2:30, all of a sudden, debris of all kinds, pieces of docks, a large object, which could have been a barge or a part of a boat or something, came down and hit our walkway with tremendous force. And what that does, it builds up a great pressure against the dock, and it actually pushed the entire middle section of the dock up over the pilings that hold it. And at that point, with that pressure, everything just let go, and it went downriver.
How many boats?
I would estimate, well, we're still counting. I would estimate right now about, there were about 95 boats involved, I would say, and we have roughly 15 or 16 of them we know are safe now. And we're bringing another big one right there. We've also got a report from down at Emsworth, or rather at Neville Island, that some of the boats are down there. There are several boats tied up in the back of the old Thunderbird Motel, which are be safe there. But what we're concerned with now, of course, is that other docks are breaking loose, boats are going down the river, plus the fact that we don't know how much further the river is going to rise. So all we can do is hope.
But you have been able to save some boats.
Oh yes. There's a big 42-footer being brought up there now. Oh yes, we've saved several of them.
Can you estimate the damage at this point?
I would be loath to estimate the damage, but I would say it's going to run, I would guess somewhere over $500,000. That was just a guess, just purely a guess on my part. I'm not certain about that.
It's hard for me to realize how last night we would be told we would be secure. and that the rivers were not going to rise, and then wake up this morning and we find that we have a flood condition, one of the worst in history. That's the real travesty of the whole situation.
I understand you've contacted Congressman Hines.
We've made telephone calls to the appropriate governmental authorities. Many of us have sustained substantial losses, and we are interested in, of course, whether or not the area is going to be declared a federal disaster area. If we look outside, there's no question in my mind that it is a federal disaster area, and the powers that be, of course, will have to decide that officially.
Some people use a time of personal tragedy for practical jokes. Management of the Harbor Isle Yacht Club said they received phone calls all morning from people claiming they had the lost boats. The callers asked for reward money or they would cut them loose. Meanwhile, rescue procedures continued and anxious owners awaited some encouraging word. One owner said it's like losing a member of the family. Yvonne Forston, Eyewitness News.
The flood has everybody in Pennsylvania talking, and Bell Telephone says that is bad. Increased use of the phone at this time causes delays in getting a dial tone. Bell says someone with a real emergency might not be able to get through. Phone service in Allegheny County, however, is in good shape for the most part. Some 13,000 phones are out of service, mostly in the downtown area and at East Liberty and in Squirrel Hill. Wet cables are blamed for those outages. Areas around Greensburg and McKeesport are also experiencing some difficulty. Pennsylvania Turnpike is closed between Breezewood and Carlisle. Transportation here in Allegheny County is also starting to slow way down. Port Authority Transit says service to Sharpsburg has been canceled. The 1A New Kensington bus is now using the 62nd Street Bridge to Butler Street and then back over the Highland Park Bridge. The 24A shuttle bus between McKees Rocks and Schoenville has also been canceled. Public Safety Department, meantime, says traffic is moving normally on all bridges in the downtown Pittsburgh area. Mayor Peter Flaherty, however, urged several stores and businesses to release employees early to permit a better traffic flow. Gimbel's and Horn's department stores, county offices, Pittsburgh National Bank, PPG Industries, and Stouffer's restaurants are among those that closed earlier than normal. High winds from Tropical Storm Agnes are causing some air pollution problems in the Hazelwood area. The air pollution index reading in Hazelwood is at 189, near the alert level. The Allegheny County Health Department says the high winds are concentrating pollution from the J&L Coke Works on 2nd Avenue down onto the area. Department official Ronald Chbosky says J&L has cut back on its coke-making operations in an effort to reduce the pollution level. And he says the situation is reducing itself drastically. Chbosky warns persons suffering from heart and respiratory ailments in Hazelwood to take it easy, however. They're advised to call their family physicians if they aren't feeling well. Allegheny County Health Department says it is continuing to monitor public water supplies to determine if they are safe to drink. Despite a general health department advisory to boil all drinking water, officials say all water in Allegheny County is now safe to drink, except the supply in the boroughs of Braddock and in Breckenridge. Their citizens are advised to boil water before they use it. Water from other major supplies in the area, the Pittsburgh Water Department, the South Pittsburgh Water Company, and the Penn Wilkins Water Supply at this time have been ruled safe to drink. Communities along the lower portion of the Allegheny River apparently haven't experienced too many problems as yet. Police officers in Tarentum say the Allegheny is rising at about a half a foot an hour, but no major damage has been reported. Police say some homes and businesses have a little water in the basement. New Kensington police say the river is also rising, half a foot an hour there too. New Kensington is still in good shape with the worst expected about 10 o'clock tonight. Only Guys Run Road in Harmerville is flooded in Harmer Township. Other roads are in good shape with little serious flooding reported. Blawnox reports no serious problems as yet. In East Deer Township, several landslides have been reported. One of them covered a portion of Route 28 with half a foot of mud. Another slide, 400 feet down the highway, hit 3 homes, pushing one of them off its foundation. There were no injuries. Route 28 has been reopened now to traffic. Well, the flooding that we are experiencing is from water that is already on the ground. And the very serious question tonight is, how much more is expected? Bob Kudzma has the details. Kuds?
Well, Patrick, we still have some more rain to look forward to tonight and throughout the day tomorrow, but it won't be the heavy rains that we picked up in the Pittsburgh area. last night. Rainfall, I think, for the next 24 hours should amount to maybe about a quarter. Some areas may pick up as much as half an inch, whereas last night it was running like 3 and 4 inches. Presently in Pittsburgh, there is some very light rain, and the temperature is 55 degrees. The humidity high, winds are west at 15 miles per hour, the barometer rising at 29.57 inches. Well, at noon, Tropical Storm Agnes, well, that's what she was a while back. Right now, it's just a plain old low. Here is Aggie now, just to the east of Phillipsburg, Pennsylvania. At noon, it was just to the northeast of Altoona. So it has moved off to the east-northeast quite slowly. However, I think that, well, it'll continue probably to move off to the northeast quite slowly, but it'll probably do another loop back into central Pennsylvania. It is weakening, though. There are a batch of showers now in northern Pennsylvania, western Pennsylvania, also some showers out in central Ohio. So we do have more rain ahead of us. But I expect rainfall in through western sections of Pennsylvania amount to maybe a quarter to 1/2 inch over the next 24 hours. This afternoon's high temperature in Pittsburgh was 55 degrees. This morning's 46. That was our low. And the pollution index throughout the Allegheny County area, that's the average for 24 hours ending at 10 o'clock this morning, was 46. Well, still a lot of rain associated with what's left of Aggie, but it looks like it'll move slowly off to the northeast. The weather will be very, very slow to improve. I think Sunday won't have any rain around here, but we will have cloudy skies and temperatures only up to around 65 degrees, which isn't a whole lot better than what we had today. But at least Aggie will take off to the northeast. It'll be some time before we get into the fair weather they're having out in the central part of the country, dominated by this high in the northern plains. There were record-breaking cold temperatures through Indiana, Illinois. Chicago, I believe, this morning was down to 46 degrees, which is a record, coldest ever on June 23rd. It's not only is it raining in the northeast, but down in the southwest. Phoenix is having the wettest June on record. They've had about 2 inches of rain since June 1st. In the first 5 months of the year down there, they had absolutely no rain. So they're getting rain down there. We're getting rain here, and the forecast looks like this for Pittsburgh and vicinity. Tonight, showers, cool, and the temperature by daybreak down around 50 degrees. Tomorrow, cloudy, occasional rain. A little on the nippy side with a high of only about 60 degrees. And then on Sunday, just plain old cloudy, cool. Well, it's warming up a bit. Not a whole lot, though. Not enough to make anyone happy. 65 degrees will be a high on Sunday afternoon. So things are getting better as far as the rainfall amounts. Next 24 hours, maybe a quarter, 1/2 an inch. Rain may come down at a pretty good clip at times, but for the most part, the rain will be quite light tonight and throughout the day tomorrow, and not a very nice weekend, I suppose, Patrick.
Western Pennsylvania is normally protected from high waters like those that have inundated in the past by an elaborate system of reservoirs and dams. But Agnes has proved too much. And to try and understand why, we talked with Army Corps of Engineers Major Dan Connor.
In the district, we have 7 reservoirs which are protecting the Pittsburgh area. And we have used up 20% of the flood storage capacity at Tionesta Lake. Up at Allegheny Reservoir, we've used 28%. East Branch Lake, we've used 80%. Down here at Mahoning, we've used 12%. At Crooked Creek Lake, we've used 18%. At Conemaugh Lake, 20%. And at Loyal Hanna Lake, we have used 18%.
Now, listening to you, everything sounds just fine. Why do we have a flood situation?
Our reservoirs are protecting the part of the watershed which is enclosed by this dotted line. There is a large unprotected area over which a great amount of rain is falling. That is this white area you see here. All of the rain that falls upon this white area is running off into the Allegheny River, and that is the uncontrolled part of the watershed that's causing such a high flow.
Communities lying along the Ohio River downstream from the point don't seem to be anticipating too much flooding. Police in Coraopolis say they'll have some basement flooding in the lower parts of the city if the Ohio crests over 31 feet. Neville Island police say a 35-foot crest would flood storm sewers located on the island's lower points. And Ambridge and Aliquippa police say they don't expect much flooding at all. 3 roads were reported closed in the Beaver Falls area, however. Police say Route 65 between Beaver Falls and Elwood City, Route 68 between Beaver and Midland, and Riverside Drive in Rochester flooded and closed. Police in Monessen say the Monongahela River is still on the rise and some basement flooding has already been reported. But no serious problem exists at this hour. Some power lines were down by the high winds. And in Braddock Borough, officials say their situation is fine with no flooding. Firemen were unable to do anything this morning as flames consumed a full block of flooded homes adjacent to the governor's mansion in Harrisburg. Heavy gas fumes filled the neighborhood and brilliant orange flames curled up through the air as firemen watched helplessly from small boats. The mansion itself was evacuated early this morning while the water that now covers the first floor was lapping at the door. Furniture was moved up to the second floor. The governor is now at his Philadelphia home. The Susquehanna and Schuylkill rivers have been fed a disastrous fill of water. The rain has been falling almost continuously since June the 13th, and now the rivers have breached their banks all along the middle of the state. The governor's $10 million mansion sits in water up to the second floor. The Susquehanna has torn dams and vainly erected sandbags away, and now residents are crowding into churches, schools, and recreation facilities that are still above water. Governor Schaap and his wife Muriel have both been touring the devastation. Mrs. Schaap was on a helicopter tour today, and while on that tour, she spotted a 4-year-old girl and her grandmother marooned on a baseball field. The two were rescued with a helicopter and shuttled to a nearby hospital, and later it turned out the little girl was having an appendicitis attack. Meanwhile, the governor toured an armory and said, "It's no Hilton, but the courtesy's much better." Suburbs around Harrisburg are literally submerged with no land showing. One of the hardest hit areas in that vicinity is the small town of York. 14 bridges are damaged there, and of course homes by the score. At least 2 are known dead in York, and several are reported missing. The municipal waterworks is flooded, and consequently the supply is now polluted. The severe storm is also blamed for a plane crash in the Oil City area. The small private plane virtually disintegrated when it crashed into the wooded area near the Venango County community. Killed in the crash was the pilot, 54-year-old William Cardwell of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Cardwell's plane went down shortly before 8 o'clock this morning. Oil City residents say they heard a plane in trouble shortly before the crash. FAA officials are investigating that accident. In northwestern Pennsylvania, in the Oil City, Franklin area, high waters also have been reported, but no emergency situation. In Oil City, the water level appeared to be stabilizing this afternoon. No roads were reported impassable. In nearby Franklin, the situation appeared to be similar. No power failures reported as yet either. In neighboring Clarion County, there were reports of camps being flooded, but no one was reported injured. Farther south, in Armstrong County, there were some minor power failures and some roads out because of overflowing creeks. The city of Williamsport, the home of Little League Baseball, is still in a state of emergency. Waters from the Susquehanna River have risen to 30 feet, and they are getting deeper. State police say they can't even begin to estimate how many families have been evacuated from their homes. The Susquehanna is said to be raging, with water rushing at the most powerful rate in 2 centuries. Wilkes-Barre is an industrial city of 60,000, and for decades it has been protected from the water by 38-foot-high dikes. But that condition no longer exists. There are no official figures, but tens of thousands have fled to higher ground, many carrying their most prized possessions. Downriver at Sunbury, a cement wall normally keeps the community dry, but today that wall and the town were under 3 feet of the Susquehanna. Well, this afternoon, Mayor Peter Flaherty inspected the 9th Street Bridge. Barges, which had broken loose, were being tied to the bridge, and the mayor was fearful the pressure would be too great on the span's supports. The mayor then told Bill Burns that the city is in good shape so far, with the greatest concern being along the water's edge.
The city overall is in good shape, and I would say is operating fine. We have some traffic problems, of course, downtown. We'd like to get the traffic congestion as low as possible. The main area of our concern really is along the river edges right now on the lower north side and in the lower triangle.
Allegheny County Police report that they are on alert and they will assist any community in the county that needs additional manpower, and they will be guarding against looting. Down in Uniontown, the situation is described as serious, with flooding expected to be the worst since 1890. The Fayette County Commissioners have declared a state of emergency. Major thoroughfares are all closed by the floodwaters. Redstone Creek is out of its banks, and the Allegheny River is pushing in that direction. In Westmoreland County, Latrobe Mayor Anthony Angelo has declared his city under a state of emergency. Many residents in Latrobe have been evacuated from their homes and moved to temporary shelters. At Youngwood in Westmoreland County, Route 119 is closed with numerous cars and trucks underwater. The West Penn Power Company's substation is also flooded, disrupting power to Youngwood, New Stanton, and Amherst. The flooding in that region has been caused by Slate Run Creek. Despite the troubles in other parts of the state, Johnstown, known as Flood City is doing pretty well in today's flooding. Officials there said the town is in excellent shape. Rivers crested well below flood stage, and the water has now started to recede. Back in 1889, of course, Johnstown suffered one of the worst floods in American history when 2,200 persons were killed. Well, if you think today's flood in Pittsburgh is a bad one, you should have been around in 1936. Maybe you were. At any rate, that year saw the worst recorded flood in Pittsburgh's history. Reporter Stuart Brown now takes a look back at the big one.
The 1936 flood hit on St. Patrick's Day, and before it was over, there were numerous deaths. 135,000 persons were made homeless, and the damage toll hit an estimated $200 million. The downtown was severely hit. This was the scene when the flood crested at 46 feet. The triangle was completely underwater. Power lines and telephones were knocked out. Safe drinking water was almost impossible to find, and everybody was on the edge of terror and panic. Houses were swept away like matchsticks, and there were so many fires nobody could count them. To give you an idea of the scale of the 1936 flood, the current floods in Pennsylvania have been estimated as causing over $1 billion in damage statewide. The $200 million estimate for 1936 covers only Pittsburgh, and that in more valuable dollars. And the rivers were not as well controlled then as they are today. However, there were some good things to come out of the great flood of 1936. Old-timers tell how people helped one another during that terrible week, how there were great rescues, how people made jokes and tried to make light of a shared misfortune. In more ways than one, Pittsburghers were all in the same boat then. It was the middle of the Great Depression, and even without a tragedy like this, times were rough. Tens of thousands of people were out of work, but from what we've heard, there was surprisingly little looting. People came together in a time of peril, and there was also a recognition that the tragedy need not have happened. A dam had burst at Braeburn on the Allegheny River, and the week-long flood sparked a movement that up to then had been only a phrase: flood control. The technology was there to control angry waters. All that was needed was the will. The Pittsburgh disaster hastened action by Congress to pass a flood control act. And even with today's flooding, some experts can say confidently 1936 won't happen again. Stuart Brown, Eyewitness News.
And tonight at 11 o'clock, we will have new film of Harrisburg, the upper Allegheny in McKean County, and other state-flooded areas. Channel 2 will monitor the flooding situation throughout the night, and we will keep you informed of any new developments. That's the news for the entire Eyewitness News team. This is Patrick Emery. I bid you an early good evening.